today what I will try to do is to bring it at a level where anyone, even someone who hasn't made any product, can start to think about scaling something. So we'll have a little exercise together. And then in a second part, I want to give you some frameworks and some common pitfalls, how to avoid them, and to try to have you think about what we just did and put it in the frame of some tools that you can use. So in the next step, heavier slides. But let me start with a little bit of context. So who am I and what do I do? Because I think if you look at manufacturing, you can look at it from very different perspectives. You can be like a quality assurance engineer, you can be developing firmware, you can be developing electronics or mechanical parts. And I want to first give you a little bit what I have done, because what I will present after will obviously be within that light. So, originally, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I work now in a company with a lot of designers, so you will see my slides are not very designy in the next steps. I studied in France, and I went for an exchange in Sweden, worked for the headquarters of Electrolux in their global innovation team. And there I was very lucky to work with marketing from all different locations, from Singapore to the US to Japan, also with designers from all over the world, and worked with mostly products in the floor care area, so mostly vacuum cleaners and so on, and helped bring the innovations into the R&D team. So we had like free budgets to go and try to find new solutions that would make it to the market and accompany them to the market. Had a lot of fun in the lab, a lot of fun with my colleagues, and then decided I need to change a little bit what I'm doing. Decided to travel a little bit, went volunteering, teaching a bit of physics and math, fell in love with Taiwan, just ended up there. And in Taiwan, I actually met Pilotfish, who has an office there, and I met Harm at the time. Super team that enabled me to actually do project management for a lot of hardware products and guide them from the concept to their manufacturing. So in the past 7 years, I've brought teams to actually bring the products on the market and be delivered. Really enjoyed that. Because at Pilotfish, what we do is that we try to go from the concept to mass production with our clients. And we start very early with like the product DNA, what is actually the product meant to solve, and what are the requirements that we need. Then we build, we iterate, we prototype, we engineer until we can bring it to tooling and mass production for our clients, basically. So it was a good match because I like working with teams and I like delivering products on the market, and Pilotfish is all about that. Back to the topic. So today, the title is When Everything Falls into Pitfalls, From Prototypes to Manufacturing. So when I was asked to do this presentation, like I said, I think depending on your perspective, you can talk about this in many different ways. There are also a lot of frameworks that are sometimes a bit heavy if you try to explain everything in quality assurance. So I was shopping, going around. I was like, how can I explain that to almost anyone? And I thought everybody goes through a sort of process of making something when they cook. And I was in the area of the shop that was hummus for some reason. So, I don't know, my brain caught on the hummus. So today we're gonna try to scale making hummus together. So please come with me on this analogy. So the problem I have, and actually ask around, and some people also have, is it was very hard for me to find a ready-made hummus that had a light and smooth texture. Everything is a bit coarse or a bit dense when you buy it in the shop. Well, I see people doing this. I'm like, okay, great, we have the same problem. So I also went next to my home, Markthalle 9, nice, like, expensive market, couldn't find it. So I'm like, okay, there's something there. There's something I want to solve. And for the next exercise, I know it's a weird problem, we're not going to question the problem. We're going to question everything after. So I went to the lab, and I started to iterate. So I said, okay, how do I get this perfect, light, smooth texture? Got the ingredients together, started to look at the process, tested. Eventually, I got a super nice prototype. I got a recipe that I liked, right amount of all the ingredients. I found that if I peel the chickpeas and remove the little skin around the chickpeas, I actually get an amazing texture. And so I have a prototype, I like it. It's delicious. It's what I wanted to do. Check with my husband. Loves it. We're good. We have a really good prototype. We feel like we're verified. I go to my friends and family, and I make a little bit more of this perfect hummus, give it a round. Everybody's happy. My prototype is validated. And everybody's like, where can I buy more? So I'm like, maybe it's time to scale. So scale and do something. There's nothing at Markthalle 9 in the nice market around my home. Maybe I want to actually try to sell it there at scale. So I start my sourcing. Like, okay, I'm gonna need like these cooked chickpeas. I'm gonna need olive oil, salt, garlic, lemon, tahini. Maybe you have a different recipe, that's also fine, but let's take this one today. Shipping, well, we'll need to eventually ship from the factory where it's done to actually where I want to sell it. I need to package it also into something, the product packaging, the export packaging, and I need a supplier with a kitchen for making it, because I'm not gonna make this at scale in my home. I need someone that has the equipment and can deal with the orders. Shipping company, different ingredients, product packaging, that was not so difficult. Asked around, found some suppliers, good. The supplier with the kitchen for making feels like it's important. So I looked a little bit around, and eventually I find a partner that someone tells me, yeah, I think it would be good. I think I heard someone working with them. And they have the equipment that I need, because I need a certain type and number of blenders. Great. I found them in an area of the world where the workforce is at a cost that seems good, better than if I did it in Berlin. And I'm like, okay, I think this is gonna work. Like, let's go with this partner. So I have found all the suppliers that I need to start actually scaling. I checked the cost of all this with the different suppliers. I have some ingredients, the peeling and the prep, mixing and blending, looking at the texture, because remember, what I'm really trying to do is to make it light and smooth. And I need to do the packaging, prepare the export box, and ship to Europe. Total 2.37, and on top of that I need to put a margin. But I decide, I'm going for Markthalle 9. I can buy saucisson for 12 euros there, so maybe 2.37 for manufacturing costs for my super nice hummus that is peeled chickpeas is not so bad. So I say, okay, let's go. It's higher price, but it's like a high-end hummus, so I'm gonna go for it. I go to the supplier that I found, and I make sure they receive the chickpeas, the olive oil, the salt, the garlic, the lemon, the tahini. And I make sure that they know they need to peel. So the first step with the chickpeas, am I still here? The first step with the chickpeas is to peel it. And then I tell them, hey, this is my perfect recipe. You need to do that. You need to blend for this amount of time. Please put someone to put it in the packaging. Make sure there are a number of boxes in the export packaging, and let's ship it so that we can sell it at the market. So I have a few things that are important. Please peel, follow the recipe, check the texture. Maybe you have a viscometer or some kind of equipment that can do that. Check the number of hummus per export box. Everybody still with me? We're making hummus, yeah. Okay, then it arrives, it starts arriving at Markthalle 9, and some people come and buy it. So I have a number of people buying my hummus that is made at scale, and people are not happy. And I don't understand. Friend, family were super happy. I tested this, it had the perfect texture. And I have 2 people who are sick. Like, I'm not in a very good position. So I go and collect some feedback from these people, and I receive 4 types of feedback. The first one is, the hummus was out of stock for 4 weeks, there were long delays, and it was not delivered at the shop as planned. So someone came and they're like, it's still not here, I really want to try this hummus. 3 weeks later, nothing, it's just not coming. I have some people that say they are not allergic to the ingredients, but they actually had an allergic reaction. So I'm really much in trouble now because I potentially have 2 lawsuits also that are coming to me. Then I have one of the hummus that was ordered was only half filled, so they received the box, but it was just a little bit of hummus in there. And a lot of people also said it's actually not worth the price. So I lost a lot of money and I potentially have 2 lawsuits. So I need a little bit of help today. What happened? And what should I have done differently? So I printed some of these slides, the main steps, and I'm going to ask you by little groups of 2 or 3 to go through what I just did and try to identify what could have happened, why do I get this feedback, and what could I have done differently. So Maeva will go around and give you some of the little handouts, and then we'll go through and see your ideas. Any questions for the exercise? No? That's good then. Using a lot more money. Does anyone want to share some of your findings?
Okay. We think that standard quality check it's really important, especially for food products. Maybe have a lab standardization. I don't know.
Yes, so some certification and some quality check in place. Yes, that's a very good point. Very much missing here.
Yeah, we have more, but
Go.
okay.
Let you pick one more.
We have another one for supplier agreement and contracts with manufacturers.
Yes, nothing mentioned, indeed.
Yes. And also market analysis and customers review of what the price is better for.
Yep, we only checked the product, we didn't ask anything about the cost. Indeed. Okay, any other group that has any other idea they want to share? Yes, there, Maya, behind you.
We have a thought like that. First, quality checks have to be with you. And depending on your mark or sprint, they might not be objective. It might be good to have like a test group outside.
So it was indeed a biased group. My friends and family like me and like hummus. Do we have more?
I guess another thing would be to test if the recipe actually scales. Because yeah, we were thinking of there probably might be problems if like you have to store the hummus a bit longer, so you might need extra ingredients here for that. So maybe go to a shop and check available hummus, what type of things they have there, any preservatives and stuff.
Yes, indeed, in the recipe as well.
So we are both allergic to nuts. So it's a pretty easy one. When you have on your label, you should say what it is. Could be contaminated.
Yeah, we think most likely also it was a nut allergy that happened for these 2 people. Okay, anything more?
Maybe some instruction that put it in the fridge or something like that. Maybe the shop just left them outside, so people got sick out of it.
Yep, makes sense.
Yeah, for me, I would think like the first batch, when you get the first batch, sell the first batch and have a trial to see how they react to it and how it is. And so yeah, as you said, like this kitchen that you rented out, they should have like documentations to prevent cross-contamination, and they should be taking responsibility for that. And having quality checks every few steps would be nice. Check the viscosity, the color, the pH, and also transporting it. It has to be refrigerated for a while before getting to the location. So I think the more checks we do, the more stops and pauses we take, the better for the quality assurance. And after you sell the first batch, you can get a feedback and also then work on the pricing, which is how much is it worth it, where can you cut costs and be more efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, so I hear a lot of like around quality assurance, quality checks, but also a point you had is I took a very big risk. I produced and just shipped it to the shop for the first batch. Okay, I'm gonna move to the next slides and I'm gonna actually go through my debugging of the situation. I think most of the points are in, some of them are not. I think everything related to keeping the product cool, I haven't put in there, but we can work around that. I wanted to walk you through what actually I would like to change and see if we have some things that we can use then later in the frameworks that I'm presenting. So, like I said, the problem I'm not questioning in this exercise. I still want to make a perfect light smooth texture hummus and avoid like dense and coarse textures. When I'm in the lab there, I already know about the ingredients and some of the processes that I will need. So part of my verification, I want to assess manufacturability actually pretty early because I can either have a look already at what I'm producing with the right experts, so I can bring a team that has the knowledge in the field that I need, or I can also start involving suppliers to do some reviews of some of the prototypes if I have a good relationship. And I also should check originally, like, hey, I'm in the food industry, there must be some certification, some standards that I need to follow. So I'm starting to already think about my compliance. So, like I said, I want to assess manufacturability, different ways to do that. You can have a team member that actually has knowledge in that, or you can also directly try to find some suppliers that would be ready to review during the development. I went that path. I said, okay, I already know I will need a kitchen, so why not starting to source? I already know that there's going to be the need for blenders and so on. So I'm going to have a look and try to find a supplier that works. And I also know that I'm in a specific industry, specific type of product, so I'm going to check what they have in terms of certification, the standard they follow, the type of quality management system they follow. Not in the food industry, in like making hardware products, you will think of ISO 9001, or if you're in the medical field, ISO 13485 for an example. So I can do that pretty early. I don't have to wait until I have my final prototype. So actually I visit because I think it's important. It's important to build a relationship. It's important to understand the environment because there might be something that your expert doesn't see that you only see. There might be, some things that you don't actually notice that are part of an environment of manufacturing, especially if you've never been in. So visit, also audit. And if you don't know how to audit a manufacturer, find someone that has the skill to do that because it's very also important to understand, okay, maybe they have a quality management system in place, but do they follow it, actually? And how much do they follow it? A lot of this quality management system get audited, but then are not really actually put in place. So audit them, and the relationship, I think, is very important also because you're doing a very innovative thing. You're making this hummus with like peeled chickpeas, like no one has done that before. So you will need to get a little bit of knowledge of how it looks like at the end, and to get them on board early, you want also to build that together. So I go back there, and now I can involve my key suppliers when reviewing the prototype iteration, which means I can also assess cost early, so I can already have a sense of like the estimation of my product cost. And I do that, and they tell me it's a bit costly, it takes too much time, or we need to invest in a peeling machine for chickpeas. And then I'm like, actually, maybe I can look a little bit further and find another way to do that. So I go back to iterating. And I'm like, oh, actually, if I use baking soda in the recipe, I'm actually getting that texture also right, So by pushing and looking at the manufacturer, I'm like, I'll peel the chickpea is a problem there. Baking soda, and the supplier tell me, oh, but this is easy. Like, we don't have to have a person there peeling, we don't have to have a machine, we just need to add another ingredient into the existing machine. Perfect. And then we assess the cost again. We see that it's a lot better. I lost €1. Amazing. All this peeling's gone. So at the end, I have a prototype that taste-wise, texture-wise, making me happy. And I checked compliance. I looked at the certification that I needed. I looked at manufacturability. I involved some suppliers and asked for their feedback. And I already thought about it in my development. And I checked the cost, and the cost is also landing. So I verified my prototype. actually for a few different requirements, not only the texture and what the product should be doing. I know it sounds very simple, but the number of projects I've seen where this is not done is crazy. Then I go to my validation, and this time I don't go to the friends and family crew. I'm like, I don't want to have my biased users, some of you also called this, and I don't want to have very friendly testers. Like, I want to go to Markt Halle 9, put a little stand, put this hummus, and just try with everybody who's passing by. That's what I would do. And then I get a mix of people that are already in the environment that I choose to sell in, and not only my friends who are very happy to say that it's great. So what I do is that I validate the product, the texture is great, but I also validate the price at this time. So I will ask the people, hey, like this hummus, what do you think of the texture? Is it really good? What do you think about the pricing? And then I can already put this like under control. So people are happy, they love it, I love the prototype, they love the product price. I'm feeling a little bit more confident than last time. Sourcing. So like I said, I found some of my suppliers relatively early because I checked with them during the development, but I also look a little bit further because I know that some ingredients might be out of stock or might be difficult to source at certain times or might have long lead time. So for some of the ingredients there, I plan multiple suppliers so that I have sources like over time in case of something happening. So here I decided that for the chickpeas, I actually want to have a few suppliers. And I go back to my key supplier that I have checked now for certification, that I have audited, that I have visited, that I have a relationship with. So all these things are now done. And we set up the assembly line together. And there are a few things there that I think are very important. First, we got rid of a very key annoying step, the peel the chickpeas. Great. So just replaced by baking soda. I want to understand a little bit how people work in the environment to try to control the relevant parameters. It is a job of the manufacturer to do that. But if your product is very new and has an innovation, it's going to be new also for your manufacturer. So I think it's very important that you also get an understanding. And there are a few things I understand from the environments that they also make, like in French you call this pralin, which is a thing with nuts. So their blenders are used with nuts a lot. So when I go there, I notice that I'm like, this might be a problem actually. So either you need to mention it on the product or put something in place, clean hands, not handling nuts or allergen while you actually do the packaging. So when for packaging actually. And we also saw that there was something missing because there were some people that received the box of hummus with a lot less hummus. So let's put in place also that people need to check not only the viscosity, but also the volume. And often what I see that is forgotten is like some of these obvious things. You think that is like a tacit common knowledge of your manufacturer, it is not. So you actually need to go through every little thing that needs to be checked in every little step. Also sometimes when you travel and you go to other countries, you might understand that actually the people that are doing the assembly are not even speaking the same language as the people of the country. Example, in Taiwan, where we do a lot of manufacturing, a lot of the people on the assembly line actually come from the Philippines and do not speak a good Mandarin. So something to remember, like these people will need to train people that speak another language. So all the standard operating procedures and so on need to be pretty detailed if you want to make sure nothing is forgotten. And what we are missing, and a lot of people also mention, is we don't have a good quality check or control process into place. We are not checking at every step that a number of things are actually met in terms of quality, especially also at the end that everything is in the box and so on. We're also not checking that the equipment is right, like we're not checking that the blenders are actually, the blades are changed every year or every 2 years. And we haven't checked anything that is coming in either. We don't know that the chickpeas are coming in a certain state. We haven't verified that. So we need to put a control process in place to understand okay, what is coming in needs to be at a certain state. At every step of the process, we need to have things that are consistently in the same state until we come to the end. So that was indeed missing. And the one that actually at the back I heard, run pilot batches. And every startup I worked with wants the pilot batch on the market because they don't have time. But run pilot batches to understand actually when you start to scale, like where are the problems? You are introducing a new product often, you're innovating in a space, and you will need to catch some of the things that are missing there. So you can only do it once you run 1 time, 2 times, 3 times sometimes this line. So this is my little debug of it. I can use the analogy and do a lot more, and we can dig very deep. But what I wanted to do with that is just that sometimes we look at very complex products and look at very much details. But what I wanted with that is ask yourself, where is your peel the chickpea step? Because sometimes it's not that obvious, and I think it's very important to have a look and step back and try to see what is missing. And sometimes an analogy gives you a little bit of like a perspective on the different things. So now I have a heavier slide loading for everybody. So the slides that are coming next are also here for you for uploading after. So what I will list is a number of common pitfalls, some frameworks, and look at one framework that I think is interesting and easy to understand in that space. Like I said, heavy. Some common pitfalls, and a lot of them we have kind of touched upon them, but we have the first one that I wanted to talk about, confidence in the early feedback. I think we don't need to go into too much details. This bias validation from friendly tester is usually a big problem. You want to really look at your use case, at your environment, and validate with the right people. We also have in prototyping a method constraints that are different in like what you have when you go to your factory. So trying to apply some DFM principles early, I think, is very important. And I also think actually what Pablo and Lou mentioned is very important. The mechanical engineer that is going to make the design and the mechanical engineering that is going to do it for your tooling might be two different people. And you need to somehow have one review the early designs and the handover being relatively smooth then if you do that. But keep in mind that what you can do with a prototype might be very different once you actually put it at scale. Another topic that we discussed earlier, yeah, sorry.
If you see that many manufacturers out of Europe now, like before, they were so much more knowledge inside. So do you see that like a change over time? Because if you have like prototype manufacturer, it was shorter time or same language, you
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting because if you're closer together, indeed the handovers are easier. It's easier to understand each other. It's easier to visit. You also have the effect that some countries that are further from us have actually a very deep knowledge in some fields when it comes to manufacturing some type of plastic parts, some type of electronics, and so on, that actually are still worth like putting like the, let's say, putting a silo in the distances and having that knowledge, just making sure you visit and so on. So I think it depends on your product and depends on what you're trying to do. I think it's not only the distance, it's also the know-how. And you need to find where this know-how is actually globally somehow. Does it answer? Yeah.
Because now, like, we don't have like the manufacturers like China has for all the electronics. So I would say like we make so much problems that we can't use it because all the knowledge now is there.
Yeah.
And this is something different that the engineer or somebody who's in production now.
Yeah, but I think you can still create the link. It's important by traveling, by finding the right partners, also by finding a partner that has English as a language, by finding a local partner that can help you with the partners who might not have the language that you need. I think you can build a line that makes sense both in know-how, cost, and like simplify the communication by putting the right people in the chain somehow. But it is a good topic. And
Yeah, how can you find the connection that someone you can trust that you can provide? Are you doing that?
we do that. We do that. Yeah, indeed. I will continue, we can discuss after also, and we have a panel also where I think the question is relevant. Yes, so I think another important topic that we had before, like is choose your suppliers wisely, not only on cost and proximity. I think the know-how is also very important. And you need to test with small pilot runs in order to understand what they can do, what they can't do, what you have forgotten, what they have forgotten. You also need to allow for this to happen because every new production is new for your manufacturer, for you. You need to try to test and understand. For incomplete documentation, I think we've gone over that. There was just a little note that I wanted to put there because I see it very often, and it's so simple, but having the incoming quality check. So when I receive my chickpeas, and I check my chickpeas, that the person who was shipping the chickpeas checked the chickpeas at the end, before shipping, the same way as I check them when I receive them. So every time you have like a connection between two suppliers, to make sure that what's outgoing from one is checked in the same way as incoming to the other. And the number of times I've seen that mismatch and creates problem because you have different expectation basically. This creates usually a problem in the flow when you scale. So it's very easy at the beginning to just catch all your suppliers and be like, oh, I want to check this way when it arrives, so please check this way when it goes out, and just align all the quality checks. Another topic that we haven't touched upon because I didn't need to make any tools for my chickpeas and for my hummus is tooling, because the tools and the machines were already like existing machines. So this is very important and also something touched upon in the previous presentation. Identify when is actually the moment to freeze, because at the moment when you freeze and you start making custom tools, this is a lot of investments that is very hard to change and to go back from. You can still have some minor changes. Example of a snap. You have a snap and you want a different feeling for the snap. If you start by having like first like less material and then more and more material in the tool, some adjustments are possible, but most of your product should be locked at the time that you go for tooling, or it's going to cost you a lot of money to come back and do another tool or a big tool modification. So this moment is important to try to map at the right step, and that means you need also an expert in the room that can tell you what is possible to change after and what is not possible to change after. Yeah, but the next one seems obvious, we have talked about it, but there is a separation of like design and production team, and also looking at the possible failures with the design or with the processes separately. I think it's very important to work together on your design FMEA and on your process FMEA so that you can catch something that could happen at the supplier. Another thing we see often is that there is no management of like how you implement changes, so there is no track. And not everybody is also informed, so you might change something in the product that will have an effect that other people are not informed about, or you will have a manufacturer doing a change without telling you, and you will not be aware of it. So you want to make sure that people that are working with you are tracking their changes and have some kind of engineering change notice system in place. And that is easy. You can just go to the supplier and say, hey, what is your ECN process? Like, how do you actually do changes? And just by asking that, you're doing like a very small part of what is an audit, and to try to understand how they process these things. And ignoring compliance until late is a very big problem, so make sure what standards would be relevant for you, for your product. And you might not have all the knowledge in-house to be ISO 9001, but you might need to have a supplier that is, and that has an understanding of what that means, and that is putting it in place, and you might need someone that can audit for you to make sure that it is actually done the right way. There's a lot more to that, and I'm very happy to catch also questions after and during the panel. Some frameworks that help, I just listed them here. I think it's very easy for everybody to look around. I will go from the bottom up actually. Make sure that you have looked at regulation, I just mentioned it, and make sure that people follow the standards. Create some resilience in the supply chain in the right points. So think about if there is a moment where you can design your assemblies or sub-assemblies that are sourced by one vendor in a way that it can be sourced by multiple vendors, can be relevant for some products. And when it comes to communication, be clear on who is responsible, accountable, consulted or supported or informed, so you can have a RACI matrix. Example, I was once at a factory with a client making the product, the manager of the factory, and my team, and everybody expected the other party to have decided how to test this very special PCBA. So we were there with a whiteboard, all agreeing that there was a gray area in the racing table. And that is not fun, takes a lot of time when it's done late, and you want to avoid it. Also, it can be that it doesn't come to the point you have the whiteboard and you go to production and figure out that no one dealt with it, and that's much more dangerous then. So, important to look at this. When it comes to how you're developing and iterating, I think everybody must know a little bit about this plan, do, check, act, cycle, that you can also say develop, prototype, verify, and continue to cycle. Very important to just keep this iteration going and to validate eventually the assumptions with the right users and so on. The last one that is on top is process control. So everything we said around like how to control the quality. Ensure that it's built into your process and from prototype somehow to mass production. And you can take some inspiration by this APQP, which is usually in medtech and automotive. It doesn't have to be so heavy, but some of the principles behind that are very interesting and are good to like just refer to. So that's another heavier slide. There I listed also what are these main like phases when you want to look into quality. And I don't want to look into every detail. Like I said, you can download them. But basically, there are some steps that I think are very important. So the first one, having your product requirement clear. But product requirement from a technical perspective, from a compliance perspective, from your user need perspective, look as wide as you can to have that clear. And also do update them if they do need to be updated after a prototype iteration. Out of that, look into the risk with your design. Try to catch the risks. So run a DFMEA, and that's also a framework that is easy to find. I will show some examples. And also not only look at the risk with your design, but look at the risk with the processes that will be used to manufacture. And have a PFMEA also in place. Then you can make a sort of control plan. How am I going to control the different parts of the manufacturing process? And you can define in an SIP, which is like a standard inspection procedure, how to inspect the product at the end very clearly. So these are for me the non-negotiable. And out of this SIP and running a few quality check and a few pilot batches, you might update your PFMEA, and you might update your control plan, and over time come to a point where it's relatively stable, and you can say you're actually in stable mass production. Little, very light example, product requirement. You want to define what the product must do and under what condition it must do it. You need to translate like what you have from customer, user, if they are not the same, and the regulatory need into something that you can measure in the engineering phase. So I don't know, for an example, PRO2, like waterproofing. It must meet IP67, which is a test for waterproof ability. So you need to do a water immersion test, and the quality assessment engineer needs to look into that. Or you can have a surface finish where you say you don't want any visible sink marks, scratches, so it needs a visual inspection. So you have a requirement list with already an idea of what's the verification method and who is owning it. Then you can move into looking into the risks that are related to what you're trying to do. And you have a few different things that you need to look into, which is what is actually creating the failure, what is the effect of the failure, what could have caused the failure, how severe it is, how much it occurs, and how easy it is to detect. And then you can start ranking your risks basically and try to catch things early. And I think this needs to be updated also along the development. Just doing it at the end might be too late, so there should be some gates in your development where you look back at the DFMEA, update it, and go to the next step. Out of that, you can also look at the process of MEA, which is how you actually, like where you will actually have risks in your manufacturing or when you assemble the product. And you can already catch some potential problems. And there it's very important that you have actually the manufacturer or someone who has an understanding of manufacturing to help you catch what usually can go wrong. And in the same way, you look at like what potentially will make it fail, what is the effect, what is the cause, and you can look into severity, occurrence, detection as well. and some actions that could be taken if that were to happen. Very important to do in collaboration with parties who understand manufacturing. Which brings me then to the control plan. You can say, okay, great, I know what are the risks with the processes, with the design. How can I control that? Like, for example, for the assembly, very easy one, there should be an O-ring, it must be installed, so someone needs to visually check it's there. And for my first production, I want 100% of it being checked, because it is very critical for the product, because it needs to be waterproof. And if something is not followed, what do I do? What's my reaction plan? Like rework, retrain the operator maybe. That control plan is not maybe something you want to build, but you need to make sure that the supplier has built, so that you can actually like have that in place and know that they are controlling what they are doing. So some of these items, you don't always have to do yourself, but you need to make sure someone is doing it in the process. Which brings us to the last one, which is the SIP, so the inspection procedure. That is in detail what needs to be done by the worker and checked. So for an example, for this type of document, usually you say, where's the inspection point? Is it at the beginning? Is it inline? Is it at the end? And there's different names for all these steps also. And you need to see how to do it, with which method, with which tools, and thus also you need to make sure these tools, are they up to date, or do they need any maintenance, and so on. So you want to actually have an SIP that describes all the little things that all the workers need to check at the different steps. And someone can come with it, look at it, and do it themselves also if they needed to. So if you want to go yourself at the factory, take it and go through. So that is also the same. It can be built by the factory, or it can be built by you. An example for us, we build them for our factory, and then they feedback on it and they improve them. But it needs to exist. Otherwise, we're in the chickpea situation where there's nothing documented, people don't know what to check, and it arrives at the customer and it's half-filled, or it's not the right texture, or there's nuts inside. So now I had a lot of information and heavy slides, but we're on time. In real life at Pilotfish, what does it mean for us actually? How do we do that? Because now I threw a lot of ideas, a lot of frameworks everywhere. So we use usually a stage gate process, and we have some very big gates at specific points. In between we iterate and as much as we can, and then we just meet again at this gate. And at some gates we meet also with the suppliers or consult the suppliers to know that we have done everything possible to make the best possible product. It's also important because we work with some startups, and we also need to try to map this gate with their funding so that we can actually provide to them what enables them to go to the next step as well. At each of these gates, we want to look not only at the technical product and how this step is verified for the prototype and so on. We also want to look at what are the risks, like I said, this like the FMEA, where is it at? What is the cost forecasting? And we want to make sure that the sign-off is cross-functional. We don't have just design being signed off by designers, for an example, or by the people designing the PCBA. We don't have engineering just signed off by engineers. Everybody should come and sign it off. Eventually, for us, our client is signing off also. We embed everything at every step, so there's no siloed team. The manufacturing team we have that manages our suppliers starts with us at scoping and at product DNA. So from very early on, they don't create a lot of content, but they give some advice and help the decisions, help to update the risk assessments and so on. And like I said, we involve the suppliers at specific gates, which is possible when you have actually a good relationship for a long time with them. We share sometimes with 3D early, obviously under NDA, so they can see and already think. Example, I have a product right now that I'm working with that has a lot of parts that can be customized. It's very important for them. So it means they will have a very big number of tools, actually, and we have the tooling manufacturer already working into how can they make some common tooling parts between the different like custom parts, and how can they optimize the sliders, and they're already thinking of that way before the tooling and trial batch, so we can like meet and have a cost at the end that makes sense for everybody. We always ask DFM feedback reports from all our suppliers. So we do our own DFM because we also have knowledge in-house, but we also ask DFM from outside. And we make sure we co-develop any jigs of fixture. So anything you will use to put your product in to test something on the assembly line, we develop together because we also have an understanding of what needs to be checked. And some pictures, because maybe some of you have never been at a factory. Tooling, some PCBA manufacturing, some assembly lines, and some checking that we do on the line. So that's just a little bit to put some pictures out there of a few of my trips in Taiwan, because I told you at the beginning I love Taiwan. So that's it. You can find the heavy slides at this QR code if you want to take it. You can find me at the panel as well. I think we're a little bit short for the questions, but we have actually, I think, a panel with 4 panelists on the same topic, so we can collect the question and then do the Q&A at the end if everybody is okay with that. Thank you for your time.